Hey, the war in Ukraine, it's back on. Like, if you thought it was off and you're like done with it, sorry, it's back on fully now. And oh man, people are excited about this. President Zelensky changed the law once again to stay in power for at least another 90 days. So your little troll dictator is going to stick around for another 90 days, even though people didn't vote for this. But, you know, supporting democracy, right? So this is martial law and general mobilization, continuing to throw young men into the meat grinder so they can die for this globalist agenda. President Trump, though, on Monday announced that he would send billions of dollars worth of weapons to Ukraine, including what's included on this?
Everything.
Everything, he said. We're like, are you going to send them, you know, the
long-range
missiles? He's like, everything. Everything's on the table.
Does that include nuclear?
I don't know. I guess everything's on the table, Natalie. So, yes, even long-range weapons are on the table that were previously off the table. So now you can just, you know, attack Moscow if you want to, I guess. When asked directly about the limits, he just said, you know, everything's on the table. Senator Lindsey Graham, I mean, this guy just about had a wet dream over the weekend on this news, saying Trump's new weapons sales, it's good for America. Listen to this douchebag.
He has been trying to get Putin to the table. He believes Putin is playing him, and he changed the game today. What did President Trump do today? He's selling weapons to NATO to benefit Ukraine. It is good for the American economy. These factories that exist in America that make weapons, that will be selling those weapons to NATO. Europe will be paying for it, and Ukraine would benefit. But he also told Putin, I'll give you 50 days to end this war. And if you haven't come to the peace table to end the war by 50 days, in 50 days, I'm going to put 100% tariff on all the countries that buy your oil and gas and defund your war machine.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
Shut up, Lindsey Graham.
I have a problem with that because it's still the U.S. budget that pays for NATO, despite the NATO conference where Europeans said in the next 10 years we will pay more.
Yeah.
So the U.S. is selling weapons to NATO, which we pay for. So basically, it's a big money laundering scheme.
It's one, as the kids will say, it's one big circle jerk. No one better to talk about this whole weapons shipment and the craziness in Ukraine right now than Colonel Daniel Davis. Great American patriot, and here to call out the bullshit on all of this. Colonel, great to see you as always, my friend. Welcome back to the show.
Always a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me back.
So what the hell's going on? I mean, I thought we were going to have a peace agreement. Now we're doubling down and sending anything is on the table, long-range weapons. So we're fully back in this, Colonel. But hey, don't worry. It's good for the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, well, as long as it's good for the military-industrial complex, then there's going to be a lot of bombs and stuff, and they're going to make weapons and money. Then cool, right? I mean, is that supposed to be the objective? You know, I'm not tracking with that. And you know, we've a lot of people voted for President Trump because he said he was going to end this in a day. He said, I know Putin, I know Zelensky, I know what their pressure points are, and we'll get this thing done. And you know, he had that big speech in Saudi Arabia a month or two ago talking about how no more wars in the Middle East and all this kind of stuff. And he seems to be going back on all of them. So I don't really understand what he's doing here and what the intent is, because if he claimed that this is going to help bring it into the war, but there is absolutely no path to doing that. And as a matter of fact, it's literally funding the opposite. So I don't know what he thinks this is going to accomplish, because even at face value, according to Axios, this was a total of about $10 billion worth of equipment. Well, you saw in 2024, Joe Biden had $61 billion of equipment, which absolutely was just had no success whatsoever. In fact, Ukraine lost, and there's probably many reasons for this, but they lost faster after that $61 billion was allocated, i.e. it did not stop anything. So why does anybody think about 1/6 of that amount is going to do anything now except maybe make Ukraine lose slower? I don't get it.
That's such a smart point. Such a smart point. Like, the more money we put into this thing, the more likely it is Ukraine loses. The most important thing that you can do to protect your family today is to protect them from cyber criminals and online predators. I mean, it is disgusting, this new era that we're living in. And there's one app that does it all. It's called Bunker. That's right. Bunker is developed by experts with 25 years of experience catching criminals and fighting cybercrime. They created Bunker to protect their own family, and now they're sharing it with you. What do you get with a Bunker family plan? Well, you get a private messenger to share messages, photos, and files with your spouse, your children, connecting only people that you approve. No spam, no surveillance, no imposters ever. Password Manager, they also provide you to safeguard your family's online accounts, including financial, shopping, streaming, social media. And they've created a vault that will securely store everything for your family: wedding photos, baby pictures, special memories, financial information. You've got pictures of your IDs, birth certificates, passports, tax documents, wills, trust, insurance, all of it in that vault. So protect your entire family with a Bunker family plan, starting with as few as 2 people for just $9.99 per user per year. That's it. So visit bunker.life/redacted and use the code redacted for 25% off your family plan. Right?
That's been the result. Because, and it really, it's not too surprising when you drill down a little bit, because it's the manpower. It's always been the men, not the machines, not the money, not the ammunition. It's been the manpower. And Ukraine is in a death spiral. They'll never be able to come up with enough men to offset what the Russians can bring to bear. I mean, they literally have millions more from which to choose. Ukraine is in a forced mobilization period where they get between 20 and 25,000 a month. Russia is in a recruiting phase where they get between 30 and 40 and maybe even 50,000 in some months, et cetera. And you see, you can never escape the math of an attritional war. This is what we're in. And so I don't understand why people at the highest levels of our government don't understand the basic math of it. Forget about your preferences or anything else. Doing this will not change the math, and it will not change the deterioration on the battlefield. Ergo, it's going to facilitate Russia winning more Ukrainian land. That's the perverse bottom line.
Well, here's something that may be a clue into why is the president doing it. When you look at the big, beautiful bill, you notice that the estimates to the boost in the economy will be due mostly to tax cuts and increased defense spending. That's how the president has budgeted increasing the economy in the short term through the big, beautiful bill. And he needs that to happen. That's the same as what President Biden made the case. Like, hey, we're going to sell the weapons. We're going to make some money. It's going to be good for us, right? And so now I see no daylight between the intention of the Trump administration and the intention of the Biden administration, which is expanding the war industrial complex. Now, we talked about before we brought you on how the administration and Lindsey Graham is saying, no, but we're selling them to NATO. But again, we pay for NATO. So do you see this as a big money laundering scheme when there's nothing's going to change with the outcome of the war, as you just said?
Yeah, I mean, whether it's intentional or just as a byproduct, I mean, that's the net result that we can't argue about. But listen, there's bigger issues for our national security which need to be addressed and highlighted here. It doesn't matter so much who pays for these weapons. It matters the fact that we're getting them out of our inventory. And it's already been, it was Bridge Colby and several others talked about in the last couple of weeks, how the reason we put some of these last pauses on the shipment going to Ukraine was because our stock were getting too low. They were getting below the critical need that we need, should we need them in our own defense. And so instead of saying, yeah, we can't give any more, because our production capacity is so slow in comparison that we don't have time to replace these losses. So now, instead of saying, no, we're going to not go down too low with our own stockpiles, we're going to go down faster. And I just don't understand why we're literally playing with our own national security. And look at what happened with Israel, what's happened with Iran, and now what's going on with the Ukraine, et cetera. Our THAAD missiles, for example, a key issue here. We used about 15 to 20% of our entire arsenal in that last barrage, that so-called 12-day war that we engaged in of our THAAD. Wow. That means our national security is now at risk if we need theater ballistic missile protection anywhere in the world. And unfortunately, that just doesn't get enough notice, and I think it needs to get more so.
Can I ask you some tactical stuff here about Ukraine? Where do we stand in this war? I just saw someone in our chat room just saying, guys, remember, like over 100,000 people, 100,000 young men in Ukraine have now deserted, soldiers leaving the front lines, running away if they can. Young men being conscripted, grabbed off the street, thrown into the meat grinder. I don't know how many of these people they have left. Can you talk about the tactics here? Like, what is the overall tactical strategy going up against Russia right now? They're being decimated.
Yeah, it's the number that I've actually seen. The most credible number is about 225,000 have been deserted, not just 100,000, unless that was over a narrow period. I'm not sure. I haven't seen that figure. But in terms of the strategy, I had a pro-Ukrainian person on my show a couple of days ago, and asked the question, because I pointed out the realities on the ground, that clearly they don't have the manpower, they don't have the equipment. These drones are going to continue to fly in. The missiles from Russia, no matter what Trump does, you won't have enough to knock them all down. And I said, what is the path? Because you see that with enough time, an attritional war will eventually grind you to literal nothing, and you'll lose everything. And he said, we're just hoping for a miracle. We're just keeping fighting one day at a time, just hoping for a miracle, holding Russia back as fast as we can. But on the battlefield, what they're doing is they're trading time for space in the hope that something miraculous would happen. There's no rational basis for that hope, but that is what they're doing. And that's why they keep fighting, just in this hope that something changes, which is a terrible thing to do, because that forestalls making a rational choice of, let's have a negotiated settlement that ends with ugly terms, and they would be ugly right now, but would stop the killing and stop the loss of any more territory, as opposed to hoping for this miracle. And if it doesn't come, you could literally lose everything.
And one of my fears is that this gives, inhuman creatures like Lindsey Graham the right to say, I told you so. You can't negotiate with Putin. So it is a stain on the efforts of diplomacy. So are we even going to try this anymore? We thought that if diplomacy had any hope, it would be with President Trump, definitely over Kamala Harris. And now it seems like that's been deflated and the bad guys now have the narrative.
I hate the way you put that, but it's hard to argue with any of it because, I had really hoped because Trump, was emphatic from 2023 on. He was always talking about, I'll have this war over in a day and, no more dumb wars and all that kind of stuff. And I genuinely thought he would do it. But then all of a sudden the days start turning into weeks, start turning into months, and every opportunity he had to use the leverage we have to compel a deal, the best terms that could come out for Ukraine, but that would force an end to this war. He just let it go. And then, he talked, remember, about 100 days. Kellogg said we'd have this done in 100 days. And then it was in April, he said, all right, we are days away from walking away from this. If we don't get it, that's going to be it. And then the days turned into weeks and again started turning into months. And now we have 50 days. And I don't know what any of these numbers mean because none of them have held. The only thing I can see, no matter what intent is that we're keeping it on life support, the war, so that it continues on. And, of course, that makes Lindsey Graham and all his folks really happy. And it just keeps the death toll climbing by the day in Ukraine, which is immoral and egregious in my view.
Yeah, maybe we can push it to 20 years like Afghanistan. Really enrich that military-industrial complex. I think that'd be great. Really fantastic stuff. Colonel Dan Davis from the Deep Dive. Always great to see you, and we really appreciate your insights on this. I think you're right. That 100 days have been squandered. Colonel Davis, great to see you. Thanks so much.
Always.
All right, coming up, we're going to